Hey there, hi there, ho there, boys and girls, ladies and germs, children of all ages. This is James J. Patterson coming to you live from the reading room at Squire Publishing, a small press with big ideas. So here we are. What month is it? What day is it? Where are we? Who knows? Um, we're uh, we're still going strong over at allensquirepublishing.com. And it's funny. We've actually had a little time to work on the website. Hard to believe. And it's becoming a little bit of a lit magazine. It's kind of exciting to watch take shape through no big agency of our own. Well, we've got a lot of help. Susan Brasada, Rose Solari, Max Barton. We've got a nice team. But the authors whose books we've published are chipping in with new material all the time, poetry, essays, reminiscences, travelogues, anecdotes. It's kind of wonderful. So get on over there and take a look around. Click on a bunch of stuff and see if you don't find something you like. The air can get a little thin intellectually when you're locked up for days on end, and and so it's fun to hobnob with your fellow wizards once in a while, if you know what I mean. And uh, so uh, so get on over there and join the team. It's a lot of fun and it's thought provoking, and it might keep certain instincts of yours fresh and sharpened for the interim here, or at least play its part in keeping you company through all of this madness. Today we're going to talk about conferences, and I know a lot of you people are professional wizards yourselves, and we go to a lot of conferences. I used to go to conferences in the 80s and 90s for music, and then later literary conferences, and some of them, are a drag and cost a lot of money, and you wonder when you get home what the hell they do that for. But every now and again, you go to one, and it would be uplifting, renovating, so to speak. And so back in June of 2004, my wife Rose and I went to one down in Atlanta, and it was exceptional. And I didn't get around to writing about it until recently when I was looking for stuff for my new book, Junk Shop Window. And so we're going to go back in time to June 5th, 2004, and something happened on that day, and we're going to revisit that as well. So here we go. Now, my old pal Hermes is going to make a visit with us again today. Several weeks ago, he showed up here with a story, Hermes and the Bathtub, and Hermes is a Hermes is a crazy cat. He steals what's been stolen, only to put it back. He lies to you, but only to get you back on track. Oh yes, that Hermes, he's a crazy cat. And now we're going to join him. This is Hermes at the Kakistocracy Hotel. It is a late Sunday afternoon in downtown Atlanta, Georgia. The Conference on Myth, Fantasy, and Imagination, on the last of its 4 days, is taking a breather between the afternoon lectures and mealtime festivities. The conference is a serious affair, and most people are here because of their work: psychologists, art therapists, writers, scholars, healthcare specialists, and people for whom lifting the lid of the psyche is quest, a devotion, and for more than a few, a last resort. The book hall is largely textbooks. This is no Comic-Con. There is no pretending here to make believe. Tonight, after supper, the heavy hitters will take the stage. Poet Robert Bly, still going strong, along with Rumi translator and poet Coleman Barks, will square off, tossing shards of verse at a very discerning audience who have learned the basics and are seeking something more. The two poets are likewise grizzled veterans who have been digging in these mines for a long time and bring to their presentation the freshness and ease that can only come from having touched every stepping stone along the way. Joined on stage by musicians playing cello, violin, and some type of zither, improvising along with their spoken verses to provide ambiance, the two masters are able to achieve the nearly impossible, to lift the audience out of time for a spell and show them a sacred hiding place, an open window, perhaps even a hint that a path might be found to some kind of salvation or enlightenment or peace. Coleman Barks I knew only from his Rumi translations, but I wasn't a stranger to Bly's work. or his live reading persona. I greatly admired his book Iron John and a mythical travelogue through the primitive male psyche. And like-minded friends had given me audiobooks of the poet reading his work, which I listened to and savored on frequent cross-country drives. Bly's reading style is almost theatrical, enhanced by his strange, otherworldly voice that is rather nasal and high-pitched for a big fellow. A Minnesotan thing, perhaps. It suits him. It softens the gravitas he brings to his delivery. He will repeat a line or a couplet over again when he wants the idea behind a phrase to sink in. He does this a lot. It's like the singing of a chorus. This repetition also has a soothing hint of mesmerism to it. You don't know when your feet have left the ground. That is the effect of working in parables, legends, myths, and allegories. He'll give you a dramatic reading of a poem and then, like a good teacher, read it again with repetitions, walking you through meanings, guiding you in deep. You thought you had a clue. You didn't. Now you do. A favorite poet of Bly's is the Spaniard Antonio Machado, whom Bly has been translating. He recites Machado in his entrancing style first. The wind, one brilliant day, called to my soul with the odor of jasmine. In return for the odor of my jasmine, I'd like all the odor of your roses. I have no roses. All the flowers in my garden are dead. Well then, I'll take the withered petals and the yellow leaves and the waters of the fountain. The wind left, and I wept, and I said to myself, what have you done with the garden that was entrusted to you? And Bly looks up at the audience, his full head of thick white hair, long and deeply parted to the side, and he reads each stanza again. The wind one brilliant day called to my soul. The wind one brilliant day called to my soul with the odor of jasmine. People who think easily in metaphor can teleport to the heart of poems such as this, but sometimes this repetition technique can help us access unfamiliar material or discover something beneath the obvious meaning of words. The audience and he are in that place now, where personal truths float and swirl about the notion of the self. No secrets, no lies, no pretensions, just being and time. Coleman Barks and Bly then take turns reading and expounding, anecdotally blending their narratives, until the whole presentation is of a piece. Bly's work fits seamlessly in with Barks' Rumi translations and Rumi-inspired more contemporary material. The well to which they return again and again is fathomless, the black water deep down, unstirred for millennia. The attendees at the Conference on Myth, Fantasy, and Imagination are serious people. By participating here, they hope to get a little of themselves back from the banal lifelessness of our downsliding culture. And that ultimately is a spiritual desire. If I have anything in common with these folks, it's a need to reacquire a sense of wonder, but with a mature longing for some kind of certainty. These notions aren't necessarily contradictory, at least not in the reprioritized world most attendees here would like to see come into being. The old hippie in me wanted to join right in. The writer in me, consequently, came away with a renewed sense of the marvelous, while at the same time longing for an assurance of sorts that my quest, or search for self, can proceed unmolested and take me where it will. By the afternoon before Bly and Barks do their thing, however, my brain is in dire need of a reset. I need a change of venue, if only for a few hours. Almost everyone at the conference is eager to share whatever revelatory impressions of their own they've been sorting through, but I now need other voices, or no voices at all. The hotel itself is part of the problem. As magnificently huge as these corporate convention hotels can be, they often give me the creeps. Before long, the stark utilitarianism of these places starts to deaden the mind, and when the mind goes numb, the soul withers. Is architecture dead? Overhead are thousands upon thousands of square feet of empty space, but it's not empty. That same stale air is everywhere, as you can no longer open a window in a big hotel. I come to feel like I'm living on recycled carpet mites carried into my lungs by vacuum cleaner gas. Strolling through the vaulted lobby, I realize that tomorrow this place won't be filled with quirky artists, peacekeepers, medicine women, and adventurers of the mind and spirit, with their crazy hair and odd-looking clothes, carpet bags, and fanny pouches. More likely, the hotel will be full of insurance salesmen, money managers, construction firms, and arms merchants. I've stood at 1,000 modern metal bars like the one in the lobby here, struggling to find something interesting in whatever the flush-faced, bug-eyed business person next to me has to say, and I shudder with a prickly peak. Prickly peak, I like that. If a kakistocracy is rule of a society by the worst men in it, then this is their hotel, the Kakistocracy Hotel. And by the way, that's an ancient Greek term for a society ruled by the worst men in it, and it means men. To make it politically correct and say worst men and women in it is wrong. If you need a word for the worst men and women in society, then you have to make up a new word. But a kakistocracy is a society ruled by the worst men in it. Okay? Lecture over. Clearly, I need to get out of here. So I decide to venture out on foot. I go back to the room, put on a sport coat, pull a tie I wore last night over my head, leave my collar loose, and make for the exit. As I cross through the lobby toward the main entrance, a gust of fresh air from revolving doors pulls me from the place, past the valet parking attendants, greeters, doormen, bellhops, all lurking about with nothing to do. The street is deserted. Sunday. Downtown. Business district. Right. I have always been attracted to the esoteric, to the poetry and philosophy of mysticism and myth. This is why I'm here. Study is one way to open doors to this arena. And though largely self-taught, I like to seek out living poets and scholars who know their turf better than I do. Sometimes those doors are shut to outside inquirers, but once in a while they open for us without any effort at all. Throughout my life, I've been lucky enough to glimpse what I will call an inkling of the divine through chance encounters with strangers. One cannot, however, orchestrate or premeditate or conjure such encounters. A neat bit of synchronicity is required. The best one can do is expect the unexpected, so naturally, when you least expect it, here it comes. Standing on the sidewalk, breathing in the fumes of an early 21st century urban afternoon, I look right and left in search of a direction. Down the street, I spot the balcony of a restaurant, one story up, with an old South filigree adorning the railings, homey and elegant, with lush, thick vines hanging down. And as I turn to make in that direction, a very large black man steps deliberately in my path. I've got some bad news for you, little brother, he says, and he falls in with me, and we walk together. Well, break it to me gently, will you? I'm a little short on coping skills today, I smile. And by way of reassurance, I reach my hand up and grip his massive shoulder and give him a pat on the back. He stops. I stop. He looks deeply in my eyes. Ronald Reagan is dead. Now, it might not have been the last thing I would have expected him to say, but it sure as hell wasn't the first. He said it so gently, as though he thought I might fall to my knees in lamentation. I had to refrain myself from saying, "Good riddance, now let's go get drunk." I pause momentarily instead and take this guy in. He has stepped out of the world of strangers to give me the news. Why me, a middle-aged white guy in a jacket and tie, stepping out of a business person's hotel? Did he think this was going to be bad news to me? He had no agenda that I could discern. There wasn't a hint of hostility in his face or tone. And as has happened to me many times before, it was as if the wily Greek messenger god Hermes was speaking to me through this man. Come to think of it, my stranger on the boulevard and I might actually have been close in age. 1960s people of all stripes called each other brother and sister back in the day. This man and I might have had more shared ideas than a superficial glance at the two of us might detect. Little brother, I like that. He made it sound familiar. I thought maybe it was. I put my hand on his shoulder once more and say, "Well, sir, I wouldn't wish Alzheimer's disease on anybody. And I've known some dear ones afflicted with it, and it's a big, bad deal. But to be honest, and forgive me if this sounds a little harsh, but in his case, I'm willing to make an exception. Welfare queens, Contras murdering socialists, sympathy for abortion clinic bombers, giant tax breaks for rich guys, paid for by school kids, teachers, the mentally ill, wounded soldiers. I gotta tell you, big brother, I ain't gonna miss them. We continue on for a bit in silence, our hands on each other's shoulder, like brothers. Actually, the silence revealing 1,000 cuts each. They said he didn't remember being president. The man said as we continued on down the street. We stopped and looked at the sky. Imagine that. Imagine that. My father loved Reagan for cutting his taxes and would have cared less about the details. There were a lot of folks like my father. Reagan was their revenge on liberals whom they called do-gooders. Like doing good was a loathsome betrayal of their greedy creed. They sincerely believed these do-gooders had robbed them of their discretionary income, only to give it away to losers and ne'er-do-wells who quite simply didn't deserve it. My parents' generation had a lot more in common with the late president than mere fiscal hoarding, and some sophomoric rationale against accepting the responsibilities of wealth and its meaning to our culture and community well-being. I remembered sitting at another Kakistocracy Hotel in Washington, D.C., shortly after Reagan's re-election in 1984. At the table behind me, a middle-aged black man was interviewing a recent college graduate, a young black woman, for a job in the administration. I overheard her come right out and ask about the religious right, the saber rattling, the welfare queens, and I can still hear him answer, "It is what it is. But if you want a job here, then you'll have to set all that aside." I still shudder. The Reagan generation was born into a world where electricity, urban plumbing, and automobiles were new or not yet extant. There wasn't any radio, let alone television. My parents, both from small towns, truly believed that the world was so big you couldn't pollute it. But Reagan himself believed that smoke went up the chimney and then simply disappeared. The greatest generation? That generation tried to destroy the world over and over again, with genocide, then with atomic weapons, then with chemicals. They stopped short of killing us all, or merely were forced to hit the brakes momentarily, thereby prolonging the agony of self-destruction. We call them great for it. I guess the implication is that a great many white people in World War II had to drop everything for a number of years, perhaps for a generation, and put themselves in harm's way to get rid of Hitler and Tojo. And thank God they did, and I honor them for it every day. But then what happened? My Hermes on the street corner then wondered if someone could have sat by Reagan's bed and told him what he had done. What would he thought? We stood there near the door to the restaurant with the appealing southern balcony for several more minutes until we had concluded our conversation. We shook hands, concluding with a familial shoulder bump and hand clasp, and wished each other well. I could tell we were both wondering if we could or even should carry on, but that wasn't the thing to do. He crossed the street, and I went inside. The wind wept, and I wept. The wind left, and I said to myself, "What have you done with the garden that was entrusted to you?" Myth, fantasy, and imagination indeed. The steak was delicious. Thanks, folks. That's it for today. Don't forget to go on over to Squire, take a look around. Add something, take something. This is James J. Patterson from the Reading Room at Squire Publishing. We'll be back next week. Don't forget to drop in on Rose Solari at 4 p.m. on Wednesday. And let's see what she's got to offer. It's always something great. Willie Porter sings for free on Saturday nights at 8 o'clock. And every time I hear him, I'm uplifted and reassured. So that's it. Hang in there, stay well, stay safe. And please, wear the mask, cover up, do this thing. We don't want to have to go through this again a year from now. Because in a year from now, there might not be people bringing you booze and food and whatever you need, or going out to your car, putting it in your trunk. So let's get this right the first time, huh? Okay, that's the speech for today. Love to you. Love to all. Bye for now.